Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday afternoon, January 25th. We have some accumulating snow today across the upper part of the Midwest, the interior Mid-Atlantic region, and now snowing in much of the northeast U.S. Again, the I-95 corridor region in the Mid-Atlantic from D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City escaped the snow for the most part, and that's the way it's been this winter season. But just to the north and west of some of those big cities, indeed, some snow fell earlier today. There is a changeover to rain now throughout much of the immediate I-95 corridor region. And on the backside of this particular storm system, the winds will really kick up later tonight and tomorrow, gusting up to 40 or even 50 miles per hour or so tomorrow in much of the Mid-Atlantic region. Before we take a look at some of the radar loops and focus in on today's event, let's look at the bigger picture here. We're looking at the very latest 12Z run of the Canadian version, the Canadian ensemble version of the model, and we're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies. And I want to kind of point out the main players on the field right now. We have this ridge here sitting off the East Coast, really centered largely over the southwestern Atlantic into the southeastern part of the nation. A cool upper level low focused in on the central U.S. And this area in between right here has been kind of a battle zone region between the colder air to the north and west and the warmer air to the south and east. Many storm systems in the recent weeks have moved from this part of the country all the way through this battleground area to the north and east. Indeed, the one today started yesterday in Texas, now over the eastern Great Lakes, and headed kind of consolidating with a secondary low over the Canadian Maritime provinces over the next 12 to 24 hours or so. Meanwhile, a huge ridge has popped up all the way through Alaska in the past several days. Well, now let's push forward. This is a 5-day rolling average here of the 500 millibar height anomalies. Again, using the very latest 12Z run of the Canadian ensemble version here. This is the current 5-day period. Now let's just move forward here and watch what happens as we go into next week. And you can see that that ridge does not give up its ground. This is the 5-day average from January 30th all the way to February 4th. Still a lot of ridging here over the southeast U.S., the southwestern Atlantic, and again, this kind of battle zone area right here. It'll be remain a very active weather pattern in this part of the nation between the colder air to the north and west here and the milder air to the south and east. That in between area right here is kind of a conduit for low pressures to move from the southwest to the northeast, but it's very difficult to get sustained cold air into the mid-Atlantic region as long as this ridge keeps waxing and waning, or keeps intensifying and then weakening. It just is kind of preventing that sustained cold air in the mid-Atlantic region, and certainly preventing any kind of severe cold from making it all the way down to the southeastern states. Let's go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go all the way out to days 10 to 14. Still signs of that ridge over the southeast U.S., and the colder than normal air will be focused over the central part of the U.S. and Canada. Well, we'll kind of see this reflected in the 850 millibar temperature anomalies, again using the 12Z run of the ensemble version of the Canadian here. Colder than normal air across much of Canada, down across the central and western part of the U.S., and here's that battleground area right here with some milder than normal air across the eastern seaboard right now. We do have some snow inland areas in the mid-Atlantic region and in much of the northeast U.S., but in that I-95 corridor region, for example, from D.C. to New York City, it's just too warm right now, and it's plain rain falling, as is the case over the Delmarva Peninsula. And it could even be some strong thunderstorm activity later in this current event. Now, let's move forward. Again, these are 5-day averages here. Now we're out to the end of January, right here, January 30th to February 4th. And this is kind of focused on the middle or latter part of next week. And right here will be a strong frontal system delineating that very cold air to the north and west and the mild air over the southeastern U.S. And this front looks like it may come through the eastern states, middle latter part of next week, ushering some cold air. But once that cold air moves in, and it does indeed, looks like it'll make it to the excuse me, the Mid-Atlantic region, the Northeast U.S., all the way to the Eastern Seaboard by the end of next week. But then we'll have to keep our eyes focused on that southeastern ridge, and it tends to just kind of backtrack again. This is all the way out to days 12 to 16, the 5th to the 10th, with that southeastern ridge. That cold air doesn't stick around for all that long in the Mid-Atlantic region or the Northeast U.S. It just really cannot sustain that cold air with this ridge sitting off the southeast U.S. coastline. Cold air does stay focused for a long period of time over much of the north-central U.S. and into Canada. Well, let's kind of focus on the current event here in the northeastern part of the nation. This is the latest radar loop from WSI's Intellicast.com, and along much of the eastern seaboard, above freezing temperatures, rain, even all the way up into Philadelphia, New York City. There's rain not too far to the north and west. There's some snowfall in the Lehigh Valley, for example, got maybe a couple of inches of snow. Even the far northern western suburbs of Philadelphia, let's say far northern Bucks County, for example, far northern Montgomery County, got some snow this morning, maybe even a coating before the changeover to rain. But Philadelphia itself and all the way down to D.C., all rain right now. You have to go interior sections of Pennsylvania, now northeastern U.S., and this is really a snowstorm for the upper part of the Midwest, and that indeed is all snow across Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, into the eastern Great Lakes. The rest of the nation virtually dry right now. Well, how much will this current snowstorm produce over the next 48 hours? This is the operational run of the Canadian from 12Z today, and this is between this morning, Wednesday morning, and Friday morning, a 48-hour snowfall total. And again, this is really kind of an eastern Great Lakes, upper part of the Midwest type of snowstorm, and northern New England here, certainly Vermont, New Hampshire, and all of Maine does really well with this particular snow situation. But you go to that I-95 corridor region, little in Boston, virtually no snow in New York City, Philadelphia, and D.C. And that's the way it's been pretty much all winter long here. And we'll see if things change as we roll into the month of February. Well, now let's take a look at the surface maps from this morning's Canadian model run. Again, snow interior sections here, but especially heavy over the Midwest. Again, Illinois, Indiana, and northern Ohio, Michigan getting a good snowstorm out of this. Rain and even some strong thunderstorms from, let's say, the Delmarva Peninsula on south with this current setup here. Warm air is kind of surging along the eastern seaboard, and yes, that can result in some thunderstorm activity later today into tonight. Maybe New Jersey also, but down to the Delmarva Peninsula. And this particular storm moves up to the north and east, and a secondary ultimately forms, and then those two systems kind of consolidate late tonight and tomorrow along the Canadian Maritime provinces. This is the Thursday morning forecast map, and here's that coastal low that kind of stole the energy from the primary initial low that moved up into the eastern Great Lakes region. And notice this pressure gradient pattern here kind of tightens here. This is an intense low, and these winds late tonight, and especially during the day tomorrow, will be pretty strong in much of the Mid-Atlantic region, gusting up to 40, even 50 miles per hour or so. Places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City on the backside of this departing low. And again, that low heads up to the Canadian Maritime provinces, and there'll be a good snowstorm up in that part of North America. Here we are now tomorrow night, still quite breezy on the backside of that storm system. Snow showers in the typical Great Lakes, just downstream of the Great Lakes to the west side of the Appalachian Mountains. Then we'll go through the next few days, and basically the bottom line here, moderately cold conditions right into the weekend. This is the Saturday forecast map, and we can go here all the way out to Sunday. Still kind of moderately cold, and then there'll be another frontal system headed to the eastern states, probably with a combination of snow and rain showers for much of the east come Sunday night or Monday. So one storm system right now will pull to the north and east over the next 24 hours or so into the Canadian Maritime provinces, and the winds on the backside Thursday, perhaps gusting up to 40 or 50 miles per hour or so in much of the Mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. That's it for now. For ArcFieldWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.